So your dad was actually
The
a veteran.
oldest.
Well, and he was a
Uh-huh.
veteran of the Spanish-American
Uh-huh.
War. And so after that, he became a salesman. And so did you guys move around a lot, or did you guys stay put and he traveled?
We moved a lot.
Okay.
I lived in Memphis twice, lived in Columbus, Kansas, while my grandmother was sick.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Dallas, Texas, and I was born in Muskogee, and we moved here from Dallas when I was in the 5th grade.
Okay, and you've been here since the 5th grade.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So do you really remember any of very much about any of those other places?
Mm-hmm. I remember my playmate in Memphis, and when my dad tried to commit suicide, my mother let me stay with them. She was an only child.
So you were in Memphis when the stock market crashed.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and that's when your dad tried to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Was after the stock market crash.
And I think my mother, I don't recall, but I think she went to Dallas with him and relocated us because we moved to Dallas. And I think the point was that I finished the school year.
Yeah.
And Edith was an only child, and I have been to see her twice, and she ended up a teacher and principal of our same grade school.
That's neat. So she stayed in the same place her whole life then?
Mm-hmm. Lived in the same, in fact, I think her mother is still there, but she became principal of the grade school, and the mother, apparently her father's dead, but the mother, Holly checked it on the computer, and there was a scholarship set up for students that went to that grade school.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the names of the streets that we lived on, and we lived in a real old house that set back from the streetcar line at least a block. And it was an old-fashioned southern home, and we always lived in apartments.
Yeah.
In Dallas, the Depression really hit us.
Yeah.
And my dad's two brothers, my mother's brother and my mother's nephew moved to Dallas and lived with us in a one-bedroom house.
Oh, wow.
And they all were looking for jobs.
Yeah.
But only the nephew got a job.
Wow.
And he moved back to Columbus in time. I think he just stayed a few years, but he stayed with us.
So, but what enabled you guys to survive through the Depression was your father's stipend from being a veteran. Is that correct?
He was injured but that didn't cover everything. And my mother, seersucker ties just came into fashion for men.
Okay.
And my mother did sewing on the side, but she would make 8 or 10 of those ties, go to the grocery store on Saturday, sell the ties for $1, and when she'd sold them all, she'd buy groceries.
Oh, wow.
And she was a wizard, so resourceful.
Yeah.
And she made dresses for little girls. I think their name was Stewart, and they owned a lumber company. She'd buy the dresses from Neiman Marcus, have them sent to my mother, and my mother would copy them and then take them back to Neiman Marcus. And my mother also made handmade handkerchiefs. I have one.
You gave me one at our wedding. Also, when I got married, you gave me one of them.
And the neighbor girl, we always lived in a duplex or an apartment, worked for the telephone company in Dallas. And she would take them and sell them for $1
Oh, wow.
to her co-workers. So.
Now, I think I remember hearing something about her providing school lunches as well.
Yes, she volunteered to fix lunch for every day, Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those kids, you see, wouldn't even have breakfast. All of us were in the same boat, as far as I know. And the grocery stores would give her cull oranges. She'd squeeze them for juice. And I think we lived off of some of those donations.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that was probably, for a lot of those kids, that may have been the only meal that they got in a day, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, you said yesterday that during the Dust Bowl, you were here in Oklahoma, and that you would go to the movies, and that when you came out, the sky would just be orange. So tell me a little bit more about the Dust Bowl. By that time, you were in Oklahoma, so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was extremely dry, and that's why we had so many dust storms. Plus, to overcome that, we started building dams to dam up the water. And one man that got out of service lived in Texas that I knew, and he built a dam there,
Mm-hmm.
and they used big machinery to do it.
Yeah.
But I had always heard that you could fry an egg on our sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hot.
Yeah.
And I asked my mom for an egg, and she let me have it, and it did fry.
So what was the impact on you guys? Were you guys really impacted very much since your dad was in sales, or was it not really?
Well, it was extremely hot, and my dad would never sleep out of doors, but I slept on a day bed in the breakfast room, and we just had one bedroom apartment, and my mother and I would sleep outside, but my dad, since he traveled, he had to stay in little towns with the hotel, and he said, I can't handle it. But I went to a beauty school here in Bethany several years ago, and heard that they were cheap, inexpensive, didn't charge much. And the students were telling one gal, goodbye, goodbye, good luck. I said, what's the deal? And they said, well, she's going to take her test to see if she passed. And I said, where is the place where they take the test? And they said 23rd and Classen. And I said, well, I grew up in that area. And I didn't say anything else to the little girl because I'm always pursuing something. But I couldn't stand it. And about the time I was ready to leave, I asked her, I said, did you live east or west of Classen? She says, I lived at 1316 Northwest 22nd. I said, I lived there 50 years ago, maybe 60. And she didn't believe me.
Yeah.
And I said, do you still have the apricot tree in the backyard? And I took her picture.
Oh, wow.
I don't know whether I still have it or not, but I thought that was...
That's so neat. It's
Isn't
such a
that
small world.
You never know who's watching.
Yeah. So when the So during the Depression, how old were you? What year were you born, Grandma?
22.
22.
1922.
Okay.
And actually, the stock market crashed in 29.
Yeah.
But it kind of caught up with us when we moved to Dallas a few months after my dad. And my dad didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And that's the last time. What he would do is he'd go out and drink and spend a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was a wizard at managing money. And so it was during the early 30s
Mm-hmm.
that it was really rough.
Yeah. Now, did he stop drinking at that point, or was it later?
That's the last time he did.
Good.
And we then moved to Oklahoma City. My dad had a brother here,
Yeah.
and nobody in Dallas that, maybe my mother's second cousin or something.
Yeah.
So we moved here, and I was in the 5th grade,
Okay.
12 years old, and moved on Halloween night.
Oh, wow.
And I remember seeing the kids, but we didn't have handouts then.
Yeah.
It was when I was in high school,
Oh, okay.
39 and 40, that we had handouts.
Yeah.
We'd go around, and we thought we were too old. We did it a few times. But anyhow, but they were happy times.
Yeah.
My mother worked where they canned food for people, and she'd work at night.
Yeah.
And she would leave me. We lived in a duplex,
Uh-huh.
and she'd lock up and leave me there because my dad would be gone sometimes. But I was real safe.
Yeah.
At that time. We didn't have the problems that we do now.
Yeah. So now, what was your dad? Was it shoe sales that he was in?
He ended up in dry goods.
Okay.
He
So that's what he was doing once you guys got here to Oklahoma. Okay.
He got a job with a dry goods company and traveled with his brother because my uncle that had lived in Independence, Kansas,
Oh, yeah.
lost his job.
Oh, wow.
They fired him because they could he was of the age where he could retire, and so they were hiring younger men.
Oh.
And so he needed an income.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad and he started traveling together, and my dad said, I think there's an opportunity for you if you carry the supplies in your car that are needed in shoe shops.
Oh, okay.
And it was leather, rubber heels,
Yeah.
whatever. And he made a living, but she came from a well-to-do family in Independence, and they
His
had
wife did?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And they had a grocery store.
Oh, okay.
And I remember going there to visit them on the train
Yeah.
between Columbus and Independence. There was a flood,
Mm.
and I remember running on either side. My dad didn't drive,
Yeah.
and we would, if we went anywhere, we'd go by train.
Yeah.
And I remember that just real well.
And earlier you said that your parents, neither one of your parents drove, but they did have a car. And so now I guess this was later in your dad's life when was he still traveling a lot for sales, or was he?
I was 16
Okay.
when we bought the car.
Okay.
Harold and Marsh taught me how to drive. And we learned how to dance together too. And my dad would have a driver.
Okay.
And that was okay too, because he had a stricture in his lower body that he shouldn't handle real heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So I remember it was a 32 Chevy.
Okay.
It was, and our first car, and I loved to drive it, and it was so much fun. And he had a driver by the name of Merle. He was about 16, and he wouldn't get there early on Monday morning. So we let him sleep on our back porch, screened-in back porch. And then he couldn't get the car started. And I'd have to get up and go start the car for them. And my dad paid him 50 cents a day. He came from a very poor family, and bought his food.
Yeah.
And
well, that's
that
not
was-
bad. That's not bad for a
was pretty
16-year-old.
and he was about my age
Yeah.
at that time,
Yeah.
16 or 17.
That's not bad for a kid that age.
And he ended up in prison. He
Oh, no.
came from they lived close into town, and I don't know all the particulars.
Yeah.
He had a sister that was married, and I think she did okay, but see, everybody was hard up
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
It took years to wiggle out of the depression.
Yeah. So what do you think about the economy right now? Like what everything's going on? I mean, obviously it's not a depression, but it's a pretty strong recession.
I think we're in deep doo-doo. And I don't think we've heard the last of it.
Yeah.
Obama has done so many things that, and he goes all the time. He's a social fella.
Yeah.
He goes to tournaments and plays golf and takes trips, and it costs thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very unlike any president we've ever had.
Well.
If they took trips, we didn't hear about it.
Well, no. George Bush just went to his ranch all the time and was never actually at the White House.
Well, I think you're right there, too.
Yeah.
But that was not as noticeable,
Yeah.
I think, as it is. Obama, and I know your mother voted for him.
Yeah. I did too.
But I think we're going to have some problems
Yeah.
in a few years.
Yeah.
But if he's not voted out,
Yeah.
but we need to get rid of him because he's see, you kids won't have Social Security
Yeah.
if maybe even now, unless we do something.
No, but we can't blame that just on this president.
No.
It's been the past probably 15 years.
And there are so many men that are elected to office that are not paying income tax.
Oh yeah.
I understood that JFK's daughter was going to run for office in Massachusetts, I
Wow.
think, and she hadn't been paying income tax. Now, that was hearsay,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And all those people made off with his
Mm-hmm.
cheating, and it just happens time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that we'll dig ourselves out, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
I do too. And I listen to the radio more than I do TV
Mm-hmm.
because the people that have the programs on the radio are more conservative than the news media on TV.
Yeah. I know that you said you listened to Dave Ramsey. Do you ever listen to Clark Howard? He's another financial
Oh,
person.
yeah.
I love Clark Howard.
He's on every Sunday night.
Yeah.
And I go to sleep with him on because I think he's very interesting.
I do too.
And in Dave Ramsey, I think I didn't tell you, but when the kids call in, young couples, and say they're out of debt, I cry.
Yeah.
I just think it is wonderful.
Yeah.
That he has, and I took Ben to hear Dave Ramsey. He was at our church,
Oh, yeah.
and there are counselors there
Yeah.
that are bona fide counselors for Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
But it didn't rub off on Ben.
Well, sometimes when your habits are bad for that long, it's hard to change your habits that
Well,
late.
And I didn't know the circumstances.
Yeah.
I asked his daughter, I said, did your mother have any? See, she had a stroke real young. Couldn't work. She was a nurse.
Okay.
He worked for his uncle, started in college, freshman in college, and Leeway Motor Freight was his uncle. He never worked for anybody else, and he worked 44 years.
Wow.
And they gave him, and I think he made good money.
Yeah.
But he was an unusual person, and I don't know whether she had gotten him in debt or whether that was the way of life, but he charged everything.
Yeah.
And I paid off 7 of the accounts.
Wow.
One to
He had
pennies.
over 7 accounts?
He had 14.
Oh my gosh.
Paying on credit cards and paying the carrying charge. The first one I paid off, one of the first ones was J.C. Penney. They charged 20% a month.
Wow. That's crazy.
And he didn't pursue anything, and he'd buy, instead of buying a good used car like Mike and Holly, he'd buy a brand new car and be so in debt. The other one wouldn't have been paid out.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, if you'll sell your house, I'll stay with you another year. And he wouldn't hear of it. And it was the house. He had to pay for the yard upkeep, and he was very particular. And there were a lot of places where we could cut down.
I need to, my battery's low, hold on. Gonna charge up for a little bit.